When you look back at this case after all these years, what are some of just the fundamental facts about what happened to Deborah Espey?
So she was reported missing by her father because she hadn't returned home from college. She was a college student at the local college in Niceville. And she was reported missing, and then her body actually wasn't found until about a month later, just over a month later. She was found in a shallow grave in Rocky Bayou area in Niceville, Florida. And so investigators hit the ground running. You know, they started to do interviews even that day, the day of she was being reported missing. I mean, they were interviewing some of her friends and other students at the college, as well as employees there. And obviously then, you know, started doing a lot more canvassing and interviewing once her body was located and the body was identified to be Deborah Espey. We had a custodian that was at the college that stated that he observed Deborah Espey leaving the school parking lot with an individual, and he was able to identify that individual as well as describe his vehicle.
So did that individual become a suspect, or
Yes,
at least definitely a person of interest?
Yes, ma'am. Early on, from the investigators that were initially working the case, identified him as a suspect, and he actually remained the suspect and the sole suspect throughout all these years.
Okay, so at some point the decision was made that we feel comfortable closing this case. What brought that about?
Correct. So just continuing to review the case, we've sent evidence that we had collected from 1973 back to be re-examined, and you know, unfortunately, we didn't know what we know now about evidence and how to store it. So it wasn't necessarily stored how we would store it now. So a lot of that evidence was degraded to where we couldn't even get the victim's DNA to come back when we once knew that piece of evidence did in fact have her DNA. So we weren't able to use the advanced technology that we have now with DNA to be able to identify a suspect, you know, any of their DNA. However, the totality of everything, you know, the interviews that were conducted back in 1973, the interviews that were conducted throughout all the other investigators who took on this case, to include interviews that I did during this case with the suspect as well as other witnesses and family members, just the whole totality of the interviewing, the evidence that was located on the scene, we have no reason to believe that anybody else is responsible other than Dennis Murphy.
But at this point, there can't be any justice from the criminal justice side of things.
So we were getting real close to doing an arrest warrant for Mr. Murphy, and during that process, we were learned that he had passed away in a traffic crash in Alabama.
Did investigators ever determine what the motive was for this, and what, if any, relationship she had with this individual?
We were unable to determine the motive. However, she did know this individual through school and was seen leaving the area that day that she was reported missing with Dennis Murphy in his vehicle at the time. They were acquaintances. I would say that they were friends, but not close friends. They kind of hung out with the same group of people. Speculation is that he thought that she was attractive and she didn't, but we were never able to confirm that.
Okay. Any reason to think that he could have been connected to any other crimes based on what you saw through the investigations during that time period?
Initially, some of the investigators earlier on thought that he may have been responsible for another homicide that occurred in November of '73, but it was really just based off of the time frame and the fact that both bodies were located in shallow graves. However, I have no reason to believe that he is responsible for any other ones.
So as far as we know, this is his only victim in this area, and case closed at this point?
Yes, ma'am. We were able to close it, death by offender, with Dennis Murphy being the offender.
And what does that mean, death by offender?
He passed away before we could charge him and actually make the physical arrest. He had already passed away from the traffic crash.
Okay. Still has to be rewarding, though, to be able to close another case with, you know, that much mileage on it.
Yes, and then the fact that the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office never stopped working it. You know, I mean, it's over 50 years, and we've just continued to work it to be able to provide whatever closure we can for the surviving family. And unfortunately, a lot of her family members have passed away before we were able to do that.